Saul's going to be limited to 50 minutes, and then we'll do 10 minutes of questions.
Well, I have been asked to be the moderator for the group here this morning, and I thank you very much for your attendance, and I thank you very much for your cooperation. We all do. This is an open-ended type discussion. We would like to go with just a little presentation at first, and then we would open it up to questions, points of interest on your part, information or observations that you have made that would be of benefit to us. What did you think of the flag raising this morning? Tremendous, wasn't it? What did you think of the 4-minute presentation there on the video before? Well, there's a lot of meaningful things there to be said. And in a sense, we're going to be talking about that this morning, replacing those stars which represent states within the United States with another system. And that system does carry the hammer and sickle. There's no question about it. All right, now, what I would like to do is to have each of these gentlemen give some of their observations and learnings back through the recent years, show what they have learned, and then I will go from there and discuss a situation that is taking place within the United States of America and close to the boundaries of the United States of America that is of vital concern to each and every one of us. You here, living in the Illinois or the Midwest area, feel that you might be relatively safe. In a sense, perhaps you're right, but in another sense, you're just in the same set of dangers that we are down on the border. I will talk about the border situation, the Mexico situation, the Central America situation somewhat, and these gentlemen can discuss those problems that pertain to you here too. I would like to start with Jack and have him give some intelligence information that I think that would warm this up and give you the idea of why we are here. Jack, would you care to talk just a few moments?
Yeah, some of this information some of you are familiar with because we have talked about it in other camps. Some of you that may be here that may have never heard this, and it will be rather shocking to you, but it's an indication of what is happening nationwide in this country. We first began to realize that there was something strange going on in Mexico about 5 years ago, I guess it was. We had, some of you I'm sure are familiar with a big lake that is located down in Mexico, south of Brownsville, Texas, near the city of Ciudad Victoria. It is well known all over the United States, the bass fishermen. I'm sure some of you have probably read about it. 2 of our men were down there on a fishing expedition, and the weather was bad. It got too windy for them to get out on the big lake. And so their Mexican guide took them on a dove hunting expedition over towards the city of Ciudad Victoria, which is about, I guess, probably 100 miles south of the U.S. border. They came over a hill and noticed a lot of activity going on the opposite side of the hill of armored vehicles of different types. They were able to get close enough to realize that these vehicles were Russian-type vehicles, tanks, armored cars, and so on, even many of them having the Russian insignia, the red star on the side of the vehicle. They were able to get some pictures of it, and then about 2 weeks later on, after they got back to the States, 2 of them got permission to fly down into Mexico with a small plane. They flew over the same area, were shot down by a MiG fighter plane. The pilot was killed, and the observer that was along with him was thrown into a Mexican jail. This was 5 years ago, and he's still in a Mexican jail. The governor of Texas at that time, and I forget what the man's name was the one before this guy that got in now. Anyway, he made the statement, he's nothing but a damn smuggler, let him rot in jail. The State Department of the United States refused to do anything about it, even though these men were on a legal flight down there. Now, we took these pictures that were shown and took them to the State Department and the Pentagon. The Pentagon didn't say very much about it. The State Department were very much upset with the pictures, and we were told, you keep this quiet. If you show any of this information, you're going to be in trouble. Well, we went back and began to talk about it in various parts of the country, and immediately the ire of the U.S. government fell on us, and we had all sorts of problems as a result of it. Some people, IRS investigations and other types of pressure that were brought against us. And one of our big problems has been people, when we give information to them about what's happening, they say, what's your documentation and what's your proof? I haven't been able to give them any documentation, because if I told them who it was that was giving us this information, you can see where the source of information would be dried up immediately, because a fellow that's sticking his neck out to give information of this type is going to be in trouble with the government if they find out that he was doing it. So it's been a question of, are the people that are talking about this thing men of integrity that we can believe, or are they just making this up for some devious reason? Now we have the documentation of it. We have the pictures available. We have the documentation available. Earl has the address, I believe, of the man that can send you this information if you're interested in it. It's going to cost you a little bit. He has put this together into a book of investigation that he has made with pictures of the Russian equipment taken in Mexico and maps showing you where they're located. And I think it's, $16, I believe it is, isn't it, for the book, if you want them. But I'm going to give you some of the information now that we have had over these years that has been confirmed there. We have confirmed the fact that there are large arms dumps of Soviet equipment in at least 8 places within 50 miles of the U.S. border. Some of them have been there for 5 years. They are down near the city of Ciudad Victoria, which is south of Laredo. There is another one opposite Del Rio, Texas, that is down on just before you get to the Big Bend area. There's another one that is down in the Chihuahua Mountains south of El Paso. There is another one in the Chihuahua Mountains on the western side of the Chihuahua Mountains in the vicinity of Nogales. There is another one near Mexicali on the California border. And there is a very, very large concentration of North Korean troops in Baja California. That's that little peninsula that goes down into the Pacific off the west coast of Mexico. These North Korean troops have been there conducting landing operations in conjunction with the Mexican army for at least 3 years, an estimated 40,000 of them down there. We also know that there are Chinese troops in British Columbia, just across the border in the north, that have been on maneuvers up there for anywhere from 2 to 3 years. Now, there is a speculation. We know that there were at least 2 divisions of heavy Soviet armor that were within 50 miles of the American border about a year ago. We know that on one occasion there was a foray into the United States of Russian armor that penetrated 200 miles into the United States in the state of Arizona, and there was no move to stop them by the American government. It was a reconnaissance trip. We know that there have been firefights between the Border Patrol north of Nogales in Arizona. There is a place there just a few miles west of Interstate 19, I believe it is, that goes from Tucson down to the border. About a year or so ago, a firefight between about 500 Mexican regular troops and Border Patrol. This included automatic weapons and so on. About 18 months ago, I received a report. This was in November 1984. It wasn't that long ago. November 1984, about a year ago, I received a report from an investigative reporter on an El Paso newspaper. He said the week before that, this would be around about the 15th of November of 1984, 10 or 12 illegals had been picked up in the vicinity between El Paso and Las Cruces, New Mexico. They were carrying component parts of a nuclear device. They were picked up. The information got to the newspaper. They had the article written up, including a big shocking headline in bold print. Before they were able to put it into print, there was word came down from a very high source in Washington, D.C., under no circumstances must this information be given to the American people. And it was cut off, and there was nothing that ever hit the news about that. Now, all during this period of time, they have seen these armored vehicles moving south of the border. You haven't read anything about it in your newspapers, have you? You haven't seen anything about it in major news media whatsoever. Now, up until about a year and a half or 2 years ago, most of the illegals that were coming across the border were very obsequious little fellows. You'd run into the average Mexican illegal, and he would do everything he could to keep out of the limelight. He'd keep away from you, and if you didn't meet him, he would be very courteous and speak to you in a very courteous manner. The ones that have been coming in the last year and a half, for the most part, are young men. They're very arrogant individuals. It's quite obvious they've received military training. Many of them are armed with the very latest automatic weapons and is up to 500 rounds of ammunition. They are carrying large amounts of American money, up to $1,000 in American money, and they are carrying American identification, Social Security cards that shows that they have served in the American Armed Forces and anything which will allow them to come into the United States without any trouble. They're coming in by the hundreds of thousands for the last year and a half. Now, about a year or so ago, one of our men who is down in the Del Rio area, and that if you come up from the Gulf Coast, just before you get into that big bulge of Texas that goes into Mexico, Del Rio sits just before you get into that bulge. This fellow here is part Indian. He's a very dark-complected individual, speaks fluent Spanish and about 6 Indian dialects, and most of the people in that area consider him as a native. He makes his money by taking out hunting parties in the fall of the year, deer hunting. Up until last year, he's always used Mexican Americans, what he calls good Mexicans, north of the border. Last year, in 1984 hunting season, he said all the good Mexicans have gone inland at least 200 miles. These are the patriotic American Mexicans. Many of them have been there longer than what the Texans have, some of them. They've been patriotic people, and that many of them fought. Most people don't realize that there were a lot of Mexicans that fought on the side of Texas at the Alamo against Mexico. And these fellows had moved inland, so he said he had to go into old Mexico in order to get his guides. He was allowed to drive across the border, load them up in a truck, bring them back to the north of the border. And he said the interesting thing took place in the hunting camps at nighttime, after the gringo hunters had gone to bed and they were sitting around the fire drinking tequila and talking about the day's work. Time and time again, the story came out from these young men that they had been approached by foreigners. They did not know who they were. They suspected that they were Russians who had been offering them large sums of money to join an expedition whose primary purpose was to move up along the Mississippi River. Now, I don't know whether you realize or not, the largest concentration of illegals in the United States is in the Mississippi River area from New Orleans up to Chicago. You go up to St. Louis, and then I think it's the Illinois River that runs up to Chicago. There are about 3 million illegals in this area, estimated. Chicago has the largest concentration of illegals anywhere in the United States. And the story that we got, and it's been confirmed many, many times from very much different sources, is that these people are being sent up along this area with the primary mission of blowing the bridges across the Mississippi River when the balloon goes up. Now that means supplies are going to have to get into them. Where are they coming from? They're coming up the Mississippi River from the Delta area. The largest concentration of Vietnamese in the United States is in the Delta area south of New Orleans. By admission of the top Vietnamese officials last year, they estimated that half of the Vietnamese refugees in the United States are Viet Cong. That would put them in the vicinity of 300 to 320,000 out of the 640,000. We do know that in the Seadrift area, this is the Gulf area about 100 miles north of Corpus Christi, that the Vietnamese leader in that area, who goes by the name of General Lon, L-O-N, has bragged that he has got 2 divisions of fully armed, equipped, and trained Viet Cong in that area, in the state of Texas now, not very far south of Houston. We also began to realize that their job not only was to blow the bridges, but also to spread out and raise havoc and cause terrorism in these cities between New Orleans and Chicago. Now, the Vietnamese community in the Delta area of Mississippi has been given by the United States government very, very fast, modern shrimping equipment. It's much better than what most of the Americans can afford, and it's caused a lot of hard feelings among the American shrimpers down there. They are being given boats that many times were twin diesel engine jobs that were used over in Vietnam. They can travel up to 50 knots. That's fast for a boat. Faster than most of our Coast Guard patrol boats. They can carry up to 70 men. Now, 4 hours or more across the Gulf from the Delta area in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico are 90,000 Mongolian troops that have been down there for 4 years, that have been brought in by the communists. We've known about it for 4 years, and our government has done absolutely nothing about it at all. In fact, we know that right now the Mexican government is on the verge of going communist. It's very, very close to it. They admit it. They are building up a situation in Mexico at the present time that will give them an excuse to legally invade the United States, saying that we have tried to take over the provinces in the northern part of the state. I think Earl will probably talk a little bit more about that. So we are in a situation right now. Now, last month, in the month of July, a large contingent of Soviet advisors arrived in Mexico City. 2 weeks ago, from a very reliable source, we received word that one brigade, that's about 3,500 men, of the Shiite Muslims. Now, this is the extremist Muslim group that has been setting off the car bombs over in Lebanon, the ones that drove that explosive-laden truck into the Marine barracks. This type of people have moved into the Mexico City area. They have come from 6 months combat duty in Afghanistan, fighting on the side of the Soviet Union. This is the situation that is being developed, and apparently, as far as we can find out, our government has done absolutely nothing to counter it. Now, the main defense along the southern border has been the 4th Armored Division, which is headquartered in Fort Hood, Texas. Under the Carter administration and continued under the Reagan administration, the 4th Armored Division has been emasculated from about 16,000 men to down under 6,000. All of their heavy equipment within the last 2 years has been shipped to the Israelis in the Middle East. They don't even have any heavy tanks down in that area, just a very, very few of them. So we are in a very precarious situation in the southwest part of the United States, and over and over and over and again, we are getting brags that are coming from that area. We are going to take over the southwest part of the United States. One more thing, and I'm going to turn it back to Earl. About a year ago, the ambassador from Mexico to Canada, at an official meeting in Ottawa, Canada, he got tanked up, drank a little bit too much, and as people do many times when they get drunk, they shoot their mouth off. He proposed a toast. Now think about this. He proposed a toast at this official meeting to the mutual border between Mexico and Canada in 1986. Now you figure out where that's going to be. Mutual border between Canada and Mexico in 1986. Many, many other things that we could talk about here, but I think we've given you enough to give you a little idea of the seriousness of the situation.
Thank you. Well, now, with respect to what he was talking about just a moment ago, about the problems along the border, we have problems that are being instigated from both sides, and it all fits together. Within Mexico, there are 2 political parties, the PAN party and the PRI party. The PRI party came into being as the Revolutionary Party back in the days before Porfirio Diaz, 1910, 1908, something like this. And they have been in power ever since. And they have done this through a very oppressive form of government. The federal police is the National Army, and they represent the PRI. Now, like, for example, 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a group, a whole battalion of the National Military, the Army of Mexico, came into Juarez, went into the police station, and just disarmed the entire police force, took all of their weapons. And they did it ostensibly, they wanted to register them. And they held them for 24 hours or better, and then turned them back to them. But this was more than just to register the weapons. It was to give the thought, the idea, the message of control. All right, now, the PAN party is the opposite party, and they have been winning some votes, some elections in Mexico. And yet they don't get their incumbents, those who have won in reality, into office, because the PRI stuffs the ballots and so forth in File 13 and other ways and keeps these men from being duly elected into office. All right, so the PAN party has become really the party of the revolutionaries, the new revolutionary people in Mexico. In a great sense, they have become their heroes. All right, so there is a conflict via the Hegelian dialect taking place right now, where these two parties are bickering back and forth very strongly. And the Comité Defense Popular, the CDP, which is represented and supported by such prestigious organizations as the Weatherman Underground, the Communist Party International, and so forth. They are a communist front organization, and they in turn represent an international agricultural workers union down there that is even representing those farm workers that come over into the United States via these buses in bus form, using labor contractors to come over, work in the fields, and go back to Mexico. Well, they have been heavily infiltrated by the CDP and this communist movement. All right, now, what is this going to mean? They are attempting to build a conflict between these two groups, and then when the time comes, the people down there are going to ask to secede into the United States. All right, now when this happens, the terrorist organizations down there are going to rise in righteous indignation and say that the imperialists are taking more Mexican land from them. This gives them that synthesis that they're looking for to do the dirty deed. All right, now to go with that, there is an area right along the border, 50 miles within the border, which is called the Frontera Zone in Mexico. And you go into Chihuahua, it's called Frontera de Chihuahua, and there will be a 50-mile. Within 50 miles down, you'll have your checkpoints to determine whether or not you have your passports or your visas to go on into Mexico. Within that 50-mile zone, you can come and go pretty much as you please. You have a different license plate in Mexico for that frontier zone. All right, well now, Bill Richardson, representative of New Mexico, who is also the chairman of the Hispanic Caucus in Washington, has recently put a bill into Congress to give what he calls a 400-mile wide free trade zone. Now you understand, we are talking a boundary of the United States of America, 1,500-mile long boundary of the United States of America. That is, what this will amount to is that there will be no boundary, and he does it from the economic point of view. Now, to go with this, the Trilateralists and other organizations have advocated for some time to bust the United States up into 9 nations. And they will call this economic nations, or they will call this a racial nation, ethnic origins, and so forth. Well, the area down there is called Mex America. And they intend to utilize this concept of this controlled conflict within this boundary to expand it into what will be called Mex America. This is so obvious to anyone who is an astute observer of the things that are happening. Down in Baja, to go with this now, I have here American Sunbeam, special correspondent, foreign correspondent, Jim Taylor, who is a very, very well-known and respected investigative journalist, had contacts that confirm exactly what Brother Jack is talking about. There are North Koreans down there making assault landings on the beaches from Korean ships. In Guerrero Negro on the west coast, it has increased in population from 4,000 to 40,000 Orientals in the last very short period of time. There are salt ships coming in filled with Orientals into Guerrero Negro area and leaving out with salt. These ships, there are 2 ships down there right now that are supposedly surveillance ships for the purpose of making electronic surveillance to all of the military forces in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and California. We recently heard there are 4 more that have come into the Mexican Gulf, 4 of the identical ships. They are also the supply ships for these training camps that Brother Jack talked about. The Arizona Republic, a prestigious paper in the United States, has investigative reporters who went down there. I have 5 separate reports, articles on this subject, and they say it's there. The San Diego Union says it is there. So we have a problem. We're not here to scare you. We're here to let you know that we're going to have to think about this. All right, now within the United States, one other point before I go to this. I'm going to turn it over to Brother Sullivan here just for his input. It's a very good input. I have contacts in Washington who are in the intelligence field. They write intelligence newsletters. I mentioned to them the information that Jack gave about the Orientals up in British Columbia area, 25 to 30,000. I said, do you know about this? And they said yes. I mentioned the fact that we have 75,000 in our figures in the Yucatan area. Do you know about this? They said yes, they know that they're down there, they don't know the exact number. We asked about the tanks. Do you know they're there? Yes, we've heard there are tanks down there. Do you know of the training camps? Well, Jim Taylor pointed out that there were training camps. Investigative reporters pointed out there were training camps, and they now realize that there are training camps there. All right, so they know that something is there. Now, I would like at this time to have Brother Sullivan talk about another matter that is within the boundaries of the United States that is of equal importance to this and fits into the overall picture. Would you do that, please, sir?
Yes, this is...
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. Okay. This is a very interesting update here, and I might add that these things that they're telling me about, I had heard about through my own sources before I ever met these 2 men, and then when they confirmed it, it was very shocking and reestablishing. I have for some time now, and I'd say in the last 3 years, have sort of made it my, I don't want to say hobby, but my sort of a sideline to study the United States concentration camps. I don't know how many of you know that in this country we do have concentration camps that are being built, and old ones being refurbished. We have pictures in our files. I have this one little packet with me back here that gives you some of the documentation. I just this week received a whole package of new pictures that have come from the Northwest of concentration camps in the state of Washington, Oregon, Utah, Northern California, and that part of the country. Our latest count is about 37. The original plan, of course, regional government divided our nation into 10 different sections, and they had one, at least one or more in each of those sections. Now the latest development is that they plan to at least have one in every state. As of yet, I do not know of one in Nebraska. Does not mean there's not one there. It just means I don't know about it. I do know that there are about 3 in Texas. There's some in New Mexico. I'm not sure how many down there, but there are several in Arizona. Even in the front page of the World Herald, which is our reputable paper in this irreputable or reputable, whichever you want to say, in the state of Nebraska, they've run several articles about they call them detention centers or detention camps. And because of the influx of aliens across the border from Mexico, all of the detention camps at this time are full. And one of the problems that they were faced is they're actually having to keep these aliens in Holiday Inn and various other motels, and you're paying the bill on it. You're keeping them and keeping them fed. The problem is that these detention centers were not built necessarily for aliens. They're built for this country and for people in this country. And the plan seems to be, at least according to an article which ran about a year ago in the Spotlight magazine as one source, even President Reagan commissioned 10 of those concentration camps to be built, and they admitted that it would be used for what they call dissenters. Well, you know the word dissenter. I'm a dissenter, and the very fact that you showed up at this meeting would indicate that you're a dissenter. And there's probably at least one plant in this room somewhere who knows who you are, has your license plate, and all of those things. If you don't believe that's true, then you've got a long ways to go. You've got a lot to learn. In 5 years of our struggle in Nebraska, we found out that there were over 1,500 automobiles from out of state that came to our support. Every one of those license plates in and out of the state of Nebraska were picked up, and every one of those people that we have had contact with have since had harassment by the IRS and FBI and CIA and others. So we know that we're being watched. We know they're keeping track of us. The thing that's frustrating is that we're more of an enemy to our own government than those communists down below the Rio Grande. And that's what's angering and gets us upset. But we have to understand that the State Department of the United States today is controlled 100% by the Zionist community, and they know exactly what's going on. So is immigration. Immigration is controlled by the Zionists. I have a friend in Texas who is an ex-CIA man, and he found out about terrorists coming into the United States, went to the immigration department, and he was told to leave it alone or he wouldn't live. He would die. I met a lady on a plane who is a psychologist. We didn't know each other from Adam. And we got to talking, and she said that she was very concerned about the influx of these terrorists from Central America. And I said, well, how did you know about those? And she said, well, I can't tell you who I work for, but it's a government agency, and I work underground. I've been inside of their meeting halls. I've seen their maps. I know what their targets are. I've seen their explosives. I know exactly what their plans are. They're just waiting for the time when the orders are given. But the disturbing thing is this matter about the concentration camps. I would fully expect, with the kind of harassment they've been giving the identity area this last year, that they're fully expecting some kind of action very soon in the Southwest. They realize that people like you and me are not going to stand by and just let it happen. We're going to resist. And they don't want that, and they're trying to destroy our ability to resist. And they're going to, now I personally don't have any guns. I've got a .22 squirrel gun, and that's it. And I'm being honest with you about that. And I do that on purpose. I'm not against other kind of weapons. But if you have weapons, I strongly urge you don't tell anybody outside your family. I just urge you, if you're going to be that, be a silent sentinel. That's the way I look at it. Really, these automatic weapons are not the best thing anyway. An good old shotgun is probably the best thing you could use. But I just strongly urge you not to be a very out front vocal person with the weaponry part of it. Now, sure, the Second Amendment says we have a right to have them. I'm for that. But you have to understand that right now they've got the guns. They've got the people that's under surveillance. They know what's going on. And you're just opening yourself up for trouble. Some very fine fellows on 2020. How many of you saw the 2020 presentation? Most of those farmers have come to my church. I know them personally. I've sat down and talked with them. It's very unfortunate they were pictured the way they are. They're not Jew haters. They're certainly upset about Zionism and its global conquest and the international banking scene. They're upset about that, and you can't hardly blame them when you're going to have their farms taken away from them. But they're not threatening. In fact, I don't know any of them that have any automatic weapons at all, and it's very unfortunate. But I think you just need to be aware that they're already preparing for you and for me, and they have a place ready for us. Right now, he may tell you some more about the Delta forces and some of the garden plot and whatever the other one is, cable splicer. I had a lady in my church who worked for the FBI, and she would feed me secret documents, and it's no secret that the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, your local sheriff and his department, the state police, all of your state and federal law enforcement agencies are holding meetings regularly, and they are planning their strategy on how they are going to handle regional government once the state borders are eliminated. And for all practical purposes, the state borders are now eliminated, constitutionally otherwise. That's one of the reasons I'm running for governor. I'd like to be able to reestablish the borders to Nebraska if I get elected. But those are some of the things that I'm aware of.
Thank you very kindly. All right, now, to go along with that, what do we do? Well, first of all, we've got to recognize that God is in command. This is our sword, and this is what we'll work with. I agree with Brother Sullivan that the Second Amendment is in order, and it is still there. There are questions as to how much longer it's going to be there. There is a constitutional convention planned for 1987. That means that we have a lot of work to do between now and 1987. We have got to get off of our apathy and get busy. I like that, Jack. That's to that end, I'm trying to do my little part, and I need support from every person here and elsewhere, wherever their heart and conscience leads them. I am going before the New Mexico State Legislature, God willing, in January of this next year. You say, well, why so late? That's the earliest I can get in because that's when they reconvene. And we have an afternoon session, hopefully about 4 hours, and I will have 3 internationally recognized intelligence experts. 2 in the intelligence field itself, and they work very closely with even the National Security Council, the Defense Department, and they even get into the White House, and they recognize what Brother Sullivan said about the State Department. They know this. All right, well, they will make their presentations, and then a third man who has written a book called The Militias of the 20th Century. He is executive director, I believe, of the Gun Owners of America under Bill Richards, the senator from California. And we are going to put this presentation on. They will give the intelligence as to what is happening to the legislators, what is happening in Mexico and into the United States, and then the other man will then give the options available to us. And it is quite obvious that the options have to be centered around public involvement, citizen involvement. It has been said that if we wanted to seal the border, it would take from half to all of the NATO forces to do this. This is an impossibility. You could say, well, we'll remove them from Korea and bring them over. We have the same problem because they just recently put 3 corps of North Korean troops on the DMZ. 3 corps of fresh troops. All right, so they can't do that. So we're boxed in, and this, in my mind, and I know in your mind, means citizen involvement, trained citizen involvement. So consequently, and of course this is a bad word, you see, all of our powers that be in the establishment, they don't want citizen involvement because they are afraid of you. They're scared of you. They're afraid that once that happens, they themselves then are in jeopardy of holding their control over the establishment. They recognize this. But any of us who have read the Federalist Papers 28 and 29 tells you that is exactly what the militia was for, to keep your government in check, in addition to protecting your borders. All right, so they're afraid of you, but we're going to try it. Now, it's going to take some support from all of you people. Brother Peters is the banker, you might say, in collecting money together to pay these guys to get out there. We have some funds in, but there's going to have to be some more. If you find it in your heart to send Brother Pete money to support the payment for these guys, they're not asking for honorariums. They just want their room and board and their plane fare paid for. It would be much appreciated. All right. Yes, just mark it for the militia project in your letters to Pastor Pete Peters' church at LaPorte, and that will take care of it. Now, I think at this time we perhaps should open up to questions and answers. We have about 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and at this time perhaps that is the best thing to do. Yes, sir.
Good question. Are you still looking for the same amount of money, and how close are you to Colorado? How old have you got? Are you 50% on your way to that amount of money, or?
Well, he wants to know how much money. He wants to know how much money is in the till right now.
Well, my first question was that you gave us a figure of $1,000.
That was the absolute bare minimum. I'd fit the rest of it up out of my pocket. But we're setting right now something like 700-800. Are we not? 900. All right. So we're coming in close to the bare minimum. How much do we want?
Only
Yeah.
1,500.
Yeah. Well, I believe a realistic figure is around the 1,500 mark. If we can, that would give them enough time to be in the area to do a little footwork for some of the legislators and so forth. But we're $500-600 out yet from what we need.
I think the thing you need to explain to them that you were willing to put the rest of the bill if you were able to get 1,000.
Yes.
It would be nice if you could get the 15.
Yes. I was going to fit the rest of the bill one way or the other. Have my wife bake up a bunch of cakes or something to sell them, and do something to get the rest of it. This is a part of what we're talking about when we raised that flag this morning. We're now just right out on the table talking about what we have to do to live our Christian ethic. Thank you very much on that. Now, are there? Yes, sir.
Quick, I got a second here. I'm concerned with a valuable issue. If there's anybody from Michigan here, please listen up. The Constitutional Convention that you mentioned a little bit earlier is going on right now. We're having a fight in the state legislature where everybody's worried about child abuse in class and all this other garbage. What's happening is I work on against the Constitutional Convention. It's to balance the budget, so don't want to fool you. It's not. We're 2 states short away. We stopped it in Michigan in January by 2 votes. And they think they can limit it. So a lot of times they tell these conservatives, well, just vote for it, we'll limit it. Once we get
Thank you very much. The number 9 is brought up. The number 10 is brought up. Some even use the figure 12 as to the regions and so forth. But they are all centered around an ethnic or origin. To go with that thought, just as an example, here are 2 copies or portions of portions of a magazine called Breakthrough, the political journal of the Prairie Fire Organizing Committee. These are several years old, but they still get the point across. And in each case, it's a portion of the Weatherman faction, and they are down working with these people in Mexico on this project. To get the idea, here is Mexico, but it goes on up and includes the boundaries of Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, plus Texas, of course, and plus the Gadsden Purchase. In other words, all of Mexico back on up through the way it was some time ago. Okay, before the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo and so forth. That is the official journal of the Prairie Fire Organizing Committee, or the Weatherman faction. And these people are representing the CDP, they're representing the Communist Party, and so forth. It's a very meaningful thing. Now, to go with that also, you see, the other portion, here is another copy that shows the same Mexico, reunified Mexico, but it shows New Africa down here. And these are all of the southern states, you see. And Mississippi, they already have a name for it. It's called Kush. And they mean this. They intend to divide this nation up into a group of nations. And it's odd, indeed, that it is very centered around the breakdown that Brother Sullivan gave. That, what magazine was it? Newsweek?
No, the magazine which I spoke about was a magazine that was distributed in the high school of Nebraska for the students in the high school. Had a map of the United States divided up into 8 different nations, called 8 Nations of the United States. That was passed out last year.
That was 8. They used the figure 8.
Yes.
All right, fine. 8, 9, 10, 12, and all of these figures, in any event, whatever it winds up to be, it's not the number that we're going to debate about. The fact that they're even going to... We had a big war once when there was a split to be made once before. And now we're going to split it 9, 10, 12 times over. And we're going to do it with an ethnicity relationship. All right, so that's the point. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir. All right, thank you very kindly, and that's a very good point, but I want to say something about it. New Mexico has the same thing. They've had it for years. It says here, now is the time for all good men, join the New Mexico State Guard. Now, they answer to FEMA. That is a national police force. A militia doesn't answer upwards. A militia answers downward. The officers of the militia are elected from the people, the members, just as it is done in the book of Numbers. Now that's the way the militia works. We must, whatever we do, respond to the people. we must not respond to FEMA, because what you do when you respond to FEMA is you're another SWAT team. All right, so we're not going to solve the problem running around grabbing our people, putting them in these 37 concentration camps. So we've got to be careful when we talk about state guards as compared to militia. But it's a good point, sir, and it's definitely a step in the right direction if we had the right boss. Yes, sir.
I have a copy of the National Investigator that has a map that shows the 9 regions that was published in, I think, in the New York Times about 45 to 50 years ago. If anybody's interested.
Yes. Is there a copier anywhere on the camp? A copier anywhere on the camp?
I don't have it with me.
Well, oh, you don't have it.
I got it at home.
Oh, I see. Well, we'll make arrangements for getting that later. Are there any other questions regarding this now? I know you have some questions. So we have a few minutes left here yet. Yes?
The little map there with Mexico extending, that anybody can't take in Colorado.
Yes, sir, it does.
Right up so far, I guess.
Yes. This is being done in a lot of different manners. And that is what, they're overwhelming you with words. Now, of course, the enemy would say that's what we're trying to do to you. They're overwhelming you with words such as the Revanche program, which, by the way, means revenge in Spanish. That is where the feet people, the people coming in here ostensibly as illegal aliens, or even through the sanctuary movement, they're calling them political escapees from their own countries. And we have our churches, Christian churches, aiding and abetting this situation. We have Christian churches saying that liberation theology is a wonderful thing. All right, so the Revanche program, where you're getting illegal aliens in here and then voting you out of existence, is a very real thing. It has been said on the national media that the last election in San Francisco consisted of 25% illegal alien votes. All right, it is happening throughout the Southwest. The second program is what they have called the Plan de Santiago. And this is an old name that they even started back in the World War I, where the Germans thought that they could divert the attention of the Americans by enticing the Mexicans to have their Mexico back. And they called it the Plan de Santiago, and there was a small minor revolution down in Texas that was set down by federal troops, state troops, and state police. All right, now, that's the second plan. The third plan is what is called Aztlan, A-Z-T-L-A-N. And this is where old Reyes Lopez Tijerina and Corky Gonzalez and Cesar Chavez, some few years back, got together and considered, we'll call it Aztlan because that's where the Aztecs, in their heritage, said, well, we came from a mystical place from the north, and so they said, well, this is from the north of where the Aztecs were, so this is it. Now, that was a somewhat quasi-militant operation, and they took over the town of Tierra Maria in New Mexico, and there was a couple people killed over it. All right, and this was not too many years ago. These people mean business. I have a copy of a portion here with me of the Communist Party in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They're meeting relative to this entire concept of a nation within a nation, all based on ethnic origin. All right, so they're fancying it up with a lot of names, but it means one thing, and they're getting the help from trilateralists, CFRs, etc. They're getting immense help, and mainly they're getting a lot of help from Zionism. Now, it means the same thing to us. We're losing those stars in our blue field. They're changing color. And I think what we saw this morning is a very real thing. Are there any other questions?
Can I make one statement?
Yes.
Word of caution. We are entering now a very, very touchy period of time as far as Christian people are concerned. I think you all realize that. Let me give you a word of caution, and that is that we need to be very, very careful of how we handle ourselves, because we don't need martyrs and we don't need people behind prison walls because of going off and jumping off the deep end. I'm a great believer in old Teddy Roosevelt's theory. He said, walk softly and carry a big stick. Be prepared for whatever is coming. Be ready for it, but don't go around shooting your mouth off, telling people how many guns you have and how tough you are and what you're going to do when the flag goes up. This has been one of our big problems, and the people that have done it have done us no good whatsoever. They have harmed the entire cause and haven't gained anything at all. The government wants an excuse to move in on us, so be very, very careful. Now, I'm not talking now about backing away from any principles whatsoever, but I found I have had the opportunity of working with young men in 3 different wars. I fought beside them in 2 wars, and I found out that 9 times out of 10, the loudmouth, the guy that brags about what he's going to do when the time comes, is the guy you can't find when the bullets start to fly. So we need men of courage and women of courage that are willing to put their life on the line, but that they use the common sense that the good Lord has given them and don't do something that is stupid that's going to hurt us. So I warn you to be very, very cautious, because the government is going to be looking for any opportunity that they can. If we do something that is outside of the law, they're going to be looking for an opportunity to crack down on us. So be very, very careful. It's a very touchy time that we're in right now.
Thank you. I have been asked to have 2 sessions on Christian survival. They will be tomorrow and Monday, and you're welcome to attend, of course, and we will discuss some of these things, and I'll include in there the Delta Force and these other organizations that we were talking about earlier, that Brother Sullivan mentioned. So with that in mind, be prayerful, ask God for guidance, but ask Him for strength. And we'll talk about this more in our Christian survival message. Thank you very kindly.